Satsang. What's satsang? What does it mean? Anyone?
Teachings, instructions from a guru, talk.
Company. Satsang. Company of the truth. Sat means truth. So it's company of the truth. So satsang is community. And we need community when we're practicing and doing sadhana. To do it by yourself ends up as the Desert Fathers. They always said to always be in community. Otherwise you end up as white bones in the desert. Because what happens is if I believe I am practicing correctly and I'm not in any way checking, then slowly but surely my small self, I begin to spin. And I'm still so sure I'm doing it correctly and I'm spinning. And I'm so far gone, and that's what happens to so many people. And it's not what we see going on is that new agey sort of, it's all just fun and happy, and it's not. As if you're really doing sadhana, it gets to be intense. And you're actually facing yourself, your small self. So, you should not be doing this alone. Clear? Clear. And so it's important for satsang would be not just in relation to the guru or the teacher, it's also the community sharing with each other. How are you doing? I don't know. How are you doing? And then as we continue to practice, we're going to realize that the world is where our satsang is. It's all out there, all the time, as we practice. So every situation we come into and come in contact with is a lila, a dance. And we're always going to be, oh my goodness, here it is. Now that person may not realize that they're participating, but for sure what's going to happen for us is we're going to have triggered whatever it is we need to learn. It's just going to keep on, up, there it is, up, there it is. Wow, that person said that, how did they, and they then, and it's always going to happen that way. So I wanted to read something from my book, and then we can discuss this. Teacher-student community. Spiritual practice is such a personal and interior experience that you might believe it has to be undertaken alone. That mindset is not only detrimental to the practice, it can be downright dangerous. In the first case, it will leave you with no external measures of your progress or support in overcoming obstacles. In the second, it can tempt you to believe that you are special in your solitary quest for wisdom. If that delusion goes unchecked, you will stray further and further from God even as you believe you are getting closer. Only when you stop worshiping at your personal altar can you go far in spiritual practice. You need the guidance of a good teacher and the support of a practicing community to make that shift. Another word for teacher is, of course, guru. Etymologically, the word is a combination of the Sanskrit gu, darkness, and ru, light. The guru takes students out of darkness and into light. In truth, the spiritual guru is not a person, but the grace-bestowing power of God, which dwells within each of us. A spiritual teacher is someone who has achieved a level of surrender that allows grace to operate through him and direct his students toward God. A teacher can guide you to the experience of your true nature, but how can you tell a true teacher from an ineffective or even false one? A spiritual teacher has to have a good teacher, has to have had a good teacher, so that there is a lineage of wisdom behind her. The master-disciple spiritual relationship that we now associate with the East was for ages an integral part of Western spiritual traditions, much like the master-apprentice relationship through which trade skills were passed on. But this principle of lineage and obedience, of received and transmitted wisdom, has largely been lost in the West. As long ago as the 10th century, Saint Simeon lamented how third-level practice had been abandoned along with the sense of obedience to one's spiritual father. It is precisely that reverence toward the hard-won expertise of a legitimate spiritual director that is missing in contemporary society. People almost always look for the most qualified doctors, lawyers, or financial planners, but when it comes to spiritual practice, they seldom invest the time and care such a crucial commitment deserves. The teacher who makes you feel good about your lower self only cultivates the part of you that resists real spiritual practice. Where there is no rigor, there is no real teaching. Many teachers claim to be part of a sacred lineage, but the trappings of a lineage do not make a teacher. A real tradition is passed on internally, so that the fact that a teacher wears traditional robes or creates an environment that showcases her lineage does not indicate anything. Good teachers teach the essential truth. They are not attached to externals, though they may have them around. More immediately, you need to be clear about your own motives and goals in your search for a teacher. As my guru used to say, we get the teacher we want. If you carry a mental image of how a teacher is supposed to look and act, you may miss the best ones. Good teachers will not always look the part. Truly accomplished spiritual teachers can both awaken and guide spiritual energy of their students. A teacher who can awaken a student's kundalini doesn't have the wisdom to direct the student toward the self will do more harm than good. I once asked a Hatha yoga instructor who talked a lot about spirituality what she would do if a student had a kundalini awakening in her class. She replied, "I'd dial 911. I'm not sure anything helpful would happen for her student in that scenario. The most important indicator of a student's worth is how he interacts with his students. When you encounter a teacher, ask yourself a few questions as you observe his methods. Does he speak so as to connect with each student on a level deeper than intellect or emotion? A teacher who coddles students in order to create a feel-good experience for them may not have their best interests at heart. My Baba would be extraordinarily patient with his students, but he often said, I give you what you want so that one day you will want what I have to give you. So now we're going to go to I'm going to skip ahead and go to the student. The student must be willing to learn, or the whole endeavor is a waste of everyone's time. This means that the student has to face the rigors of spiritual practice and be willing to give up everything that isn't truly essential. Such surrender requires discernment. A student has to be able to trust the teacher, that the teacher is coming from a place of wisdom and love and not seeking power and control. After all, a teacher can't fix a student. She can only give the student the tools of spiritual practice and help him recognize and seize opportunities to transform himself. Finally, the student must make a total commitment. Spiritual practice is not a lifestyle. It has to become the bottom line of your existence, not something you occasionally use to make yourself feel better, or something that props up your ego, or something that serves as an intellectual or emotional diversion. If you forget about the practice the moment you walk out of a session with your teacher, then you should reconsider your commitment. There are many other ways to learn nothing from a good teacher. You can even live with a teacher for years and gain nothing if you don't want what the teacher has to offer. Some people are simply not equipped to grasp the subtleties of spiritual practice. Others lack the discipline to sustain their practice. A common error is to buy into a false dichotomy that sets up spiritual growth against worldly success. The two are not at all mutually exclusive. After all, the practice is internal and can be pursued regardless of your outward life. One of the most pernicious mistakes students make is relying on the teacher's energy and wisdom without imbibing the practice for themselves. Many people at Baba's ashram just basked in his Shakti and never learned the practice. After he left his body, they were lost and confused and either resorted to an empty, nostalgic lifestyle or gave up the spiritual life. Ideally, your practice should involve not only sessions with your teacher, but the community of other practitioners. We all need the support of others, especially those who share our commitment. Whatever other communities we belong to, family, civic, professional, social, only a spiritual community will offer us support in our practice as well as in our mundane activities. That support takes different forms. To begin with, we are often unreliable judges of our own spiritual progress because the nature of the practice is that it goes right at our blind spots. Our other students can help us uncover our ignorance or provide empathy and encouragement as we go through the process of giving up attachments. Fellow students also offer each other practical support, both routinely and in times of crisis. We may undergo periods of relative solitude, but we are not meant to do this work alone. At the root of teacher-student and student-student relationship is the need to keep good company. Good company is anyone or anything that encourages your health on every level. Apart from fellow practitioners, one form of good company is books, particularly scripture. Studying scripture can provide an intellectual framework for our experience and affirm the teachings of a true guru. A home environment that promotes stillness and harmony is an important part of spiritual practice as well. As we grow in our practice, we will learn how to be anywhere in any company without losing our way. Until then, we must choose our company wisely. Baba used to say that God is everywhere, but until you can actually experience reality all the time, it is healthier to be in a place of worship than in a bar. In ordinary life, our senses tend to be turned outward. A good teacher, community, and home environment work together to help us turn inward and find the self. Clear? Good company is about, it's the food, it's our house and how we relate, it's with everybody and everything. So any interaction, any project we pursue should be in fact done in a way as our sadhana, no matter what our work is, no matter what the activity, no matter how simple. And it can be shopping, hanging out with friends. It's somehow we tend to go unconscious. We stop practicing. This is not, as I keep saying lately, a laboratory science. This is not to be done just in here. This is to be applied everywhere. God is everywhere. Everything we do has this. We can be anywhere. Anywhere. And when I mean anywhere, I mean anywhere.